Three things have happened to me over the last 2 years. And I've learned that I can't control it, but I went on the side of being positive, and other things have opened up, so things are better now. But I keep on getting this hint that I should be doing something different than I'm doing. But I like what I'm doing, but there's something else, and I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Well, there's always more.
Yeah.
But if you like what you're doing, that counts for a lot. It is our promise to you that if you like what you're doing, you have not created a virtual reality that is competing. But there is always more, even in what you're doing.
Yeah.
More satisfaction, more financial remuneration, more interaction, more upliftment, more reason to move. In other words, the stagnation doesn't feel good, but there really is stagnation is really not a possible thing. But sometimes people get determined to stay where they are, even though life has caused them to create something beyond, and then that's when they begin feeling that something's calling them that they're not going to. Want to talk about it in more detail?
I work in healthcare. I enjoy helping people. I'm a nurse. But I'm also getting into energy healing, too, because that just kind of came to me. But just something seems, I like what I'm doing, but something's there, something I should be doing within that. I don't know.
Well, this is not surprising, given what you're coming to know. When you hear us say to doctors and scientists, when you stop looking for cures and start looking for vibrational reasons, then you'll have long-lasting improvements. Then you'll really be getting somewhere, you see. And so medicine and science, they are examples of what we just said, of situations where whole industries are so determined to not look beyond the reality of what is. In other words, they want to be completely science-based, fact-based. And so as they gather their facts, it holds them in a place and doesn't allow them to go. So for someone to have what science and medicine call a miracle is not easy within the framework of that, because we visited with someone in your identical capacity, feeling much as you do, a while back. And she was asking for some words or some methods that she might apply that would help her be more effective in helping her patients. And we told her what you can imagine we would tell her, gave her quite a stream of it. And she said, "Oh, Abraham, I couldn't do that because we're not allowed to give false hope." And just the fact that she was calling hope false, because the hope defied the reality. So to encourage it was false hope and lawsuit potential as far as her environment was concerned. And we said, if you can't give someone hope, you've got nothing to give them. You can't help them at all. Change their bandages and go home. In other words, there's no healing power without hope. There's no improvement power without hope, you see. So you're feeling that. In other words, you can feel just with the people that you interact with, those that have the vibration that makes you know the recovery is going to be swift and complete, and those that it's just going to squirt out in another way and another way and another way. You can patch them up endlessly. Sometimes to those in the medical profession, it feels like people are like balloons with little pinholes, and you just plug up that hole and there's another one. You plug up that hole and there's another one. Plug up that hole and there's another one. They just keep finding another way to puncture themselves because they are not in the vortex. And so that's what we meant when we said earlier that even though you love what you do, there's always more. And your environment, while it is moving slowly, is moving. More and more people are leaning in the direction of understanding that they create their own reality. And everyone, 100% of people, feel better when they're being encouraged than not. Mm-hmm. And yet there are those who are in such a defensive place about where they are. In other words, when something goes wrong in your experience, especially with your body, you feel defensive because innately you know that it should be going better. And so it activates your feeling of unworthiness, which makes you feel defensive. We talked about that earlier, how kids defend themselves. And most people have stopped rooting for themselves in the way that we are wanting them to advocate for themselves. And instead they are defending against what they don't want. So what you're wanting to do is find a way of evoking their feeling of hope, their feeling of well-being. Compliment them in every possible way that you can. Anything that you see that's the slightest improvement, give that your attention. Let them know that you feel pretty good to me today. You feel like those that feel like that when they are on the path to recovery is basically what you're wanting to say. There are a lot of things that you can say that are incredibly encouraging in nature that won't evoke any kind of a lawsuit. And the thing that's most important is, and we're wise enough to know it too, don't give it to those that aren't in the vicinity. Those are the ones that'll sue you when it doesn't work out. In other words, don't give it to those that aren't in the vicinity. So just be aware of where you are and do your best to always be in the vortex. And here's the biggest thing. It's an interesting thing. Since the doctor is doing the surgery and all of that stuff, and you are primarily a soother, you have much more opportunity to do the real stuff than they do. Because you're a soother, and we are too. In other words, that's the whole point of the focus wheel. You get soothed. You get in there, you get soothed. You get in there, you get soothed, you see.
Well, I just didn't understand why all those
Get right in there.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand why all those three things happened to me that were like, even one of them would have just like caused a major problem in one person's life, and I had three things. And a friend of mine said I was the unsinkable Miss Molly, which I didn't understand what that meant, but I guess you only endure, you only get what you can endure. But I had like this medical problem. They didn't know what was causing it. I knew what was wrong, and trying to tell them, and one of the doctors said, we know what's wrong, we know there's something wrong, but we're too stupid to figure it out. And then I just asked for a way of finding out what's going on, and I was led to the people to help me with that. And so I was very fortunate, but now I have my children.
So you're surprised that you're intuitive? You're surprised that
No, I think I've always been intuitive.
So from inside the vortex, doesn't it seem logical to you that from inside the vortex that you would have insight, or that the path would light up for you?
Yeah.
Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Oh, it was, absolutely wonderful. And then when they found out what it actually was, and what I was saying was true, they were like all shocked. So, and now I'm just dealing with my children, but now because I got divorced, but now
breathe deeply and speak more
I'm sorry.
loudly.
Now I have I just got divorced, and I have two wonderful children, and they were told all these things that weren't true, but now they're coming around and knowing who I am, or they always knew who I was. But I was thinking positive. I never lost that kind of faith.
Well, then what you're saying to us is, I intuitively knew to not try to control the uncontrollable. I didn't fight back. I didn't get defensive. I stayed in my vortex. I remained true to who I am, and the universe has my back. I advocated for me without even really knowing I was doing it. Jerry was telling Esther a story this morning. You want to tell it again?
Which one?
About the thing. It seemed like things were going wrong, but they were really going right.
Oh, yeah.
Because it applies here. And
yeah, I was, after that last session, actually, we're talking about things are in the vortex, and we're not even aware. And we don't have to fight to get what we want. We don't have to push against anything to get what we want. But we've been, I think I must have a short. Oh, so the story was, I can remember one time I was just getting started in show business, and my partner and I were living in a little trailer that had a canvas top on it, and I had found Libby's had put out a little can of, it was beans, macaroni, and some meat, ground meat in it, and it really tasted good. So I bought a whole case of it. So anyway, I got this job at a theater in San Antonio, and agent promised me, well, I've got this, and I got this, and I got this gig, and they just want you kids to stay here. We go, you're just so wonderful. And I said, okay, great. And so the next Saturday, getting ready for the show, he said, sorry, it fell out. And the next Saturday, sorry, it fell out. And the next Saturday, it fell out. And so, of course, we're out of money, and we're starting to eat. We get up in the morning, eat a little bit out of the top of the can, and then at lunch, we'd eat the middle of the can out. Then at supper, we'd eat the bottom of the can out. Then in through all that, one guy that I thought had betrayed me, a guy at the Sergeant Gray Utley, who ran all the show business for the military there in San Antonio, didn't come to the audition kind of thing. He said he'd come and catch my show at the theater, and he didn't. And I went to really tell him off, and I went in, and he just kind of laughed at me because I was really mad. And he just said, oh, I got you set for this and that and the other. And that opened up, which I then had years and years of shows with all the military installations as a result of that with Gray. And then I thought, well, all that good came out of this other guy, Brennan, who let us down so badly. And then right after that, a guy I knew from high school. I was a cheerleader. He was a cheerleader before me, Emil Parra, who is now a performer. And he performed, and he said, oh, if you could come to New Orleans, he said, Ruth Tibley, my agent, she's got all these gigs. He said, you kids would just go great guns. And then that led to another series of shows My point was, I could have fought Brennan for letting me down on the contract, and I could have battled all that. And instead, the way it worked out, it was just wonderful. And one other was, I worked many years later, still in the same business. I used to work at fairs and outdoor celebrations every summer, and you booked them early, and they booked early. They had these conventions for that, and then they were done. They were all sold for the year. And so Bob DiPaolo, my agent out of Calgary, said, I've got you set. I went every year. I always did Bob DiPaolo's outdoor celebrations, Western Canadian fairs. And and just before then, a friend of mine in Spokane said, Jerry, would you find this people in this Billboard magazine has an ad for an MC, a juggling master of ceremony or something like that. Find out what it is. I said, I'm booked. He said, well, I'm just curious. So I sent the guy a postcard, but that was it. And then Bob called and said, I'm sorry, he said, I just don't know what to tell you. They canceled. I lost all the Western Fair circuit. It's all gone. And there was no way for me to turn. I had no work now for the whole summer. There was no place to turn to. And I got a postcard back from the guy, Jack Swetzer, in Sioux Falls, who was the agent for the other operation out there. And Jack says, could you, he wanted me to come out. And I did that. And when I got there, not only did that work out for all that summer, but I did a tour with many of the original ink spots. But anyway, we toured and he said, you've got this for the rest of your life if you want it. In other words, I never ever had to look for another job after that if I wanted to continue to do those concerts with the ink spots. So my point was, in both of those cases, it looked like the end of the world for me, and I could have fought and battled and tried, for something else, and I started to. Even with Gray, I was so upset. But look how it all unfolded. It was all in my vortex, just waiting for me. And I'm thinking, how often we think it's the end of the world, and it's not at all. It's just we just relax and trust and expect it's going to turn out. A lot of people do. I didn't so much. I'm getting better at it.
Because
all right. So much for my story.
Because the universe always has your back, because it's already been there. It's already the cooperative components have already been gathered. And so what he's describing, and you are too, that when you maintain that expectation of well-being, then you allow yourself proximity to the vortex where you then are able to receive the next logical step and the next logical step and the next logical step. And it will never stop unfolding. In other words, it seems in the example that Jerry is offering that it was easier to see the door that was opening. But when you are consistently inside the vortex, it's always easy to see the door that is opening. And this is a time like no time that has ever been before, when the doors that suit who you are opening inside the medical community. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Enough. Good time for a segment of lunch.